People's Republic of China or China is celebrating its 75th National Day on October 1. So it is very interesting to know how this party was formed in the era when people were very much dissatisfied with the ruling government. So here we have Rahul and Yash with us to discuss on this topic. So welcome both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So my first question to Rahul, how this party was formed at that era when there was so much massacre going on, people were very much dissatisfied with the government, how this happened?
Right. So, Chinese Communist Party, as the name suggests, was founded on the principles of communism. And whenever communism comes to any country, there are certain situations or conditions preceding that. And that is normally when the masses are very dissatisfied with the ruling class. And so that was true for China as well. And so to really understand how this party arose, we need to understand the previous 40 years. So the modern China, which we call as People's Republic of China, was founded on October 1, 1949, which will complete its 75 years. So before that, however, so if we go 40 years before that, so around 1911, if we say, in fact 1911 was a very important year for China, because that was the date when the Qing Dynasty that used to rule China, and it had ruled China for more than 200 years, its rule came to an end. And post that year, the various political parties arose and they started to rule China in different forms. Now, because those years were very tumultuous, sometimes we see that this party ruled for a couple of years, then it fell, and then someone else started to rule. But slowly and slowly, there was the feeling that something needs to change. And there were events happening in the Western countries. The rise of communism, the revolution in Russia, which was inspiring the people of China. So the intellectuals, the students, they heard about it, they read about it, and US as well, with the idea of capitalism and democracy. So what we will see and hear later during the discussion, so such leaders arose that brought those ideas to China. So in some way that experiment happened and kept happening until that this communism idea really took hold of the intelligentsia, the students, and they mobilized the masses. They arose, they formed their army, which basically formed the founding stone for the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay. So all these happening were in which period?
Okay, so we have already talked about 1911, when rule of monarchy ended, which was this movement was led by Sun Yat-sen. He is considered as father of modern China. So we have agreed that the monarchy rule has changed, has ended. However, other things had not changed. The economic system have not changed. The social structure had not changed. Way the education happened did not change. Still, only few people were educated. Masses were not really that educated. And even if education happened, it focused more on Chinese philosophy such as Confucianism and less on science and technology. So a major event happened in 20th century, which we all know about, that is World War I. It happened from 1914 to 1918. China was also one of the participants in the war. China lost the war. Any party that loses the war has to sign a treaty, which is obviously not in its favor. Since China lost the war, it had to sign treaties which were not in its favor. This angered the general population a lot. So they saw one thing. First of all, China itself was not good in terms of science and technology. If it was, it could have had nice weapons to fight back with the foreign powers. Secondly, it saw that the Western democratic countries, which are capitalist, are the ones who are enemies of China, or at least who defeated China. So before this defeat happened, these Chinese intelligentsia rather had a positive opinion on the democracy and capitalism existing in the modern West, including Sun Yat-sen, who himself used to live in America for long period of his life. However, now that they have seen that these same capitalist democratic countries are the enemy, they realize that we should not be capitalist and democratic like them. It also did not really help that the government which had existed since 1911 may have said that we are a modern capitalist democracy like West, but people were not seeing the same type of changes they saw in West.
So it was not happening in reality. It was only the philosophy of government, but they were not able to implement those policies among the people.
Yes, so the people were not seeing any benefits. So so the gentleman he mentioned, Sun Yat-sen, he is considered the father of modern China because he was responsible for mobilizing people, telling them they need to rise against the Qing Dynasty and so on and so forth. But the events happened in such a way that he did form a government initially, but then he had to later resign and give the power to another gentleman who was basically the general of a Beiyang army. He formed a government. But he was also a very conservative person who, again, was not really interested in benefiting the large swaths of people. So, and again, he died a couple of years later, and his party and all the government, they again fell in disarray, and a lot of warlords arose in that period. So again, there was a period of sort of anarchy. So there is no central government. There are warlords in different parts of the country. Again, they would rule the people in the way they had already ruled, basically exploiting them. So what happened was he had founded a party, Sun Yat-sen, and it is called KMT party. So while another party was ruling the country, the Beiyang party, but the KMT party was existing in the background. And so it started to grow in power, and it happened that around 1926 to 28, it started the process of unification of China. It started to defeat warlords in different parts of the country. And then after in around 28, KMT came to power. KMT rose to the power.
Under the rule of gentleman Chiang Kai-shek, right?
Chiang Kai-shek. So while this party was formed by Sun Yat-sen, it was actually a different person, Chiang Kai-shek, under whom this party came to the power. And for the very first time after the Qing Dynasty, China was unified, and it was then called Republic of China. However, even Chiang Kai-shek was not really a good person. He was again a very authoritarian person, tyrannical person, and people were not really seeing any benefits in their life. The poor remained poor, and that was the kind of situation that really led to the rise of communism and the communism movement in China, which was basically a precursor for the Chinese Communist Party. So while the Chinese Communist Party had formed in around 21, but then this condition that existed led to its rise and prominence, and eventually the rise to the power where it would basically form the government.
Okay. So I've heard about May 4th. This is a very important day in the history of China. So would you like to highlight that?
So yeah, May 4th was the date on which this student protest against Treaty of Versailles happened, in which China had to sign unequal treaties, as in the treaties which favored the Western countries more than the China itself. And this was the movement in which students were talking about social and economic changes. Till now, till 1911, they were talking about political change, how what type of government we should have. But now that we have a Republican government, or we can say the government in which people are elected to the power, now it was okay. How the society should be like? Should it be a society in which there's an income inequality, people are backward, or should it be the society where people are scientific and we have less income inequality? So that is how this people's viewpoint towards communism started changing. People became more positive towards the ideology of communism. It also happened that just 2 years before 1919, communist revolution happened in Russia, which was led by Vladimir Lenin. And within 2-3 years, people started seeing changes in Soviet Union. Soviet Union, which was famously a communist country. So obviously, that communism was the reason why changes happened in Soviet Union in first place. And I believe not only in China, in many countries around the world, especially in the countries which were poor or third world country, we will say, they had rather positive opinion on communism. Even in India, there was some people who rather had positive opinion on communism after watching the Russian Revolution. One of them was famous freedom fighter Bhagat Singh, who rather had a positive opinion on this communism. That's why when he became the leader of Hindustan Republican Army, he changed its name to Hindustan Socialist Republican Army. So you can get a basic idea that how popular communism was in early 20th century, except that it was properly implemented in China.
So how this Communist Party was growing in this period?
Yes. So this student movement was basically while the Chinese Communist Party can be said to have formed in 21, but it was this student movement that basically put spirit and essence in the modern Chinese Communist Party, because most of the important leaders of Chinese Communist Party came from this student movement who had taken part in this movement. And in this movement, even the normal population had been mobilized. As he said, the Treaty of Versailles and Japanese had put a lot of demands, and this time everyone was started to take active participation in the politics. So after this, the Chinese Communist Party started to interact with people, started to form government or at least rule parts of the country where it could form. However, the main thing was that it was establishing connect with people. And so while in this period, 1919, etc., the Beiyang party was ruling the country. And obviously it was not ruling properly because it had fallen, and then warlords had started to rule the various parts of the country.
It was called warlord era.
So it was called warlord era. And then this KMT started to fight these warlords. And initially, Chinese Communist Party and KMT had started the fight together. But that quickly ended when KMT basically turned against the Chinese Communist Party and it formed the government. And there was a very strong rivalry between this Chinese Communist Party and KMT. But Chinese Communist Party was quite weak throughout this period of 26 to 49. But then the World War II started, Japanese invasion happened, and all these rivalries had to take a back foot. But once the World War II ended, then the era of Cold War started.
In 1947.
So yeah, after 45, this Cold War era started, and the world was divided into two blocks. One block led by US and the other block led by Soviet Union. And Soviet Union obviously supported the Chinese Communist Party. And because of their support, because of the able leadership of Mao Zedong, and they basically took control of quite a large amount of weapons that Japanese had left behind when they had been defeated and when they had left the country. And here, while US was supporting KMT, but it was corrupt, it was not effective. So finally, because of these confluence of these factors, Chinese Communist Party and the army that it had founded, the Red Army, which again still exists today, was able to defeat the army of KMT, the Nationalist Republican Army, I think something of that sort. So the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, and its army, under the leadership of Mao, defeated the KMT party, and this KMT was relegated to a very small portion in basically Taiwan. So while KMT still exists today, but it is the Chinese Communist Party that rules the majority of China, mainland China, which is called People's Republic of China.
So the reason why rivalry has happened between KMT and CCP is because of two reasons. First of all, both of them believe in one party rule.
Okay.
KMT too and also CCP. They always think that if China has too many parties, China can again become disunited, and if China is disunited again, then the foreigners can take advantages of China.
Okay. So they want only one party to
both
rule
of them.
Okay.
Both are against multiple. But that is since when after democracy. Yes, I'm talking about that in era from 1920s to 1940s when the rivalry between CCP and KMT happened. It happened because both believed in one party rule, both wanted to rule China, but more than that, both had big ideological differences. KMT was party that believes in protecting traditional social structure, traditional power elites, big business, big landlords, and it was a Han chauvinist government. So it believed in supremacy of Han people over all the races of China, whereas Communist Party believed in wealth distribution. It was for land reform. It was against people accumulating too much wealth, and it believed that all the races, all the ethnic group of China should be equal. It should not be like one community is more dominant than other community. In fact, there is a famous speech by Mao Zedong in 1957, in which he said that the Communist Party should make sure to end feeling of Han chauvinism among both the party members and the normal people of China, because as per him, a chauvinism of one race can always lead to disunity. That was obviously not same case with KMT. So that's why there was too much of ideological difference. Whenever they had to unite, they united. Either it is for uniting against warlords or against Japanese invaders. Although there was one interesting event about Japanese thing. Leader of KMT, which is Chiang Kai-shek, he was initially not very anti-Japanese. Even when the Japanese invaded China, his main focus was still against Communist Party. He thought that Communist Party is a real threat to China, not the Japanese. He was not really caring about Japanese invasion. Even though Chinese Communist Party said, let's stop the civil war, we can continue it later. First, let us unite against these Japanese invaders. Chiang Kai-shek was not interested. However, his general, they were anti-Japanese. They thought, no, Japanese invasion is a real threat. Let's unite against it. So they in fact kidnapped Chiang Kai-shek and made him sign treaty with Mao Zedong that for now we are stopping the civil war. Once Japanese are rooted out of China, then we can continue it. So that is how the kind of unity happened between KMT and CCP. But because of fighting with Japanese, KMT army was very weakened. So that was a big advantage to CCP. So once the Cold War started, we already had a KMT that was quite weak. Plus, KMT did not have support of majority of people who were still poor. Communist Party had support of majority of people. That's why they won. And one big advantage these CCP had over KMT was that Mao Zedong was a champion of guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare is not the traditional type of warfare. Traditional is that you go to a battleground, armies are standing on either side and then they fight each other. Guerrilla warfare is when you are hiding and then attack someone. Like a normal army goes into the jungle and the people are hiding in the trees or something. They shoot at the main army and the army is not able to recognize, oh, where did the shot come from. So they knew where to hide, from where they can take, shoot, assassinate people.
Okay.
So that is, Mao Zedong was quite good at it. He had read books like Art of War and everything, and that's how he was able to defeat KMT.
And as Rahul said earlier, that Russia also helped Communist Party
Yes.
in one sense. So it was able to become stronger.
Exactly, they had access to Soviet Union weapons.
So Rahul, finally what happened and how they got to make the government?
Right. So finally, there was a war between KMT and the Chinese Communist Party, and because Chinese Communist Party was better organized, had a stronger army, had access to the weapons that Japanese had left behind, and capable leadership of Mao Zedong. That is how they were able to defeat KMT and defeated them so decisively that they basically retreated to Taiwan.
Okay.
So the 99% of the China, the mainland China, came under the rule of Chinese Communist Party, and that Communist Party is obviously going strong till today and is now celebrating the 75 years of the formation of the modern China, which is called People's Republic of China. So,
and they have changed China?
Yes, in fact, it was a very agrarian economy, and now it is so industrialized, powerful, economic, militarized. So yes.
So yes, this was interesting to talk about this topic, and I think audience must have a fair idea how this party was formed. And with this note, I end this podcast, and we'll see you in our next podcast. Till then, thank you. Goodbye.